Welcome back to the 2015 fall semester for College of the Sequoias. Thank you so much for a little bit of your time this morning. This is a great opportunity for us at the start of the fall semester to pull our district together and to use this convocation setting to share some of our successes, focus ourselves for our future, update ourselves on where we are on a variety of things as we get started this academic year. So I'm really thankful for your time this morning. Appreciate that very much. As we get started, I want to begin with some important introductions, as always. I'd like to first acknowledge our members of the College of the Sequoias Board of Trustees who are here to join in convocation with us this morning. I'd like to recognize Lori Cardoza, our board president, who's here with us this morning. And right on cue, I'd like to recognize Ken Nunez, our board vice president. And two of our other board members who are here with us this morning, both past presidents. I'd like to acknowledge John Zumwalt and Greg Sherman. Thank you for being here this morning. I also don't want to miss the opportunity to thank our district management team, all of our managers really, but especially the senior management team who's worked really hard. We feel good about the fact that we have a cast of vice presidents who have been together for 4 years now. That might be a record, I don't know, we'll look. But we're excited about the cohesiveness and the shared vision and the shared philosophy and core values that we're developing together. And it's our pleasure really to serve you as your senior management team. I also have a very special group of young people that I'd like to introduce to you this morning. One of the things that we're doing, we're going to hear a little bit this morning about student success and student equity and what that looks like in today's day and age. And one of the things that we're doing to expand that outreach and to diversify our student population is we've implemented a College of the Sequoias President's Scholars Program. So it's a little different than an honors program. It's modeled after an ambassador-type President's Scholars Program that are often offered in four-year colleges and universities. It's an opportunity for young people to apply from our feeder district high schools or from outside of our area to have the opportunity to come to COS and be designated a President's Scholar. They have to be among the top academic achievers in their graduating classes. They have to have a grade point average of 3.5 or higher, and they have to have completed all of the A to G requirements in order to be eligible to go to CSU and UC, and they have to be a life member of what we call in the high school world the California Scholastic Federation, which is a rigorous track of courses that they take in high school from their 10th grade year through their graduating year. These are students who have bought into our new philosophy, which you're going to hear us talk a lot about, which is that COS should be part of your first choice education plan. If your goal is to go to Cal State or UC, we can help you do that. I stood in front of the Giant Days orientation groups of students in this room and on campuses in Tulare and Hanford. And before the groups left, after we welcomed them and we gave them the orientation, I made them pull out their phones. And I said, I want you to put these two, you guys remember this? I want you to put these things in your phone right now. Type in ADT, Associate Degree for Transfer Pattern. And I explained to them how that ADT program works and how they can complete that pattern and have those courses under those majors approved for a guaranteed transfer into their CSU program. And then I had them type in TAG, Transfer Admission Guarantee, which is the same kind of partnership we have in place with the UC system so that they can take classes in specific areas and majors, meet criteria, and be assured that for a select set of the UCs in our system, all 60 of those units are going to transfer. So they'll go in with junior status. So these are students in that arena for us who have decided that that sounded really good. We're going to make COS part of our first choice plan. So they're going to be the inaugural group. They're our ambassadors this year. And I had an orientation meeting with them earlier this week, got the chance to meet them, and I wanted to just quickly introduce them to you today so you can see who our first group of President's Scholars are. So scholars, if you would stand up, please, and face the audience. Jasmine Gilchrist from Redwood High School will be studying psychology. Crystal Flowers from Mount Whitney will be studying biology. Emma Billingsley from Redwood, studying psychology. Chandler Langley, Tulare Union, majoring in elementary education. Tyler De La Garza from Central Valley Christian is in our physical therapy assistant certification program. Daryl Lumbris from Exeter Union High School, majoring in biology. And Ryan Medina from Hanford West will be majoring in architecture. Welcome our President's Scholar. The other thing I want to make sure I do before we get into the meat of our program is to thank all of us who have been involved in important work over the course of this summer. Probably first and foremost, we had wonderful summer school sessions. Faculty who taught in those sessions, thank you so much on all 3 campuses. Staff who worked to support students in those sessions, thank you as well. You know, the non-instructional areas are busy during the summer. We had a busy summer in facilities, grounds, maintenance. Even though we're not embarking on big new construction projects anymore, we're doubling back and we're recommitting ourselves to the care, the maintenance, and upkeep of all of the new facilities that we have. So while that's not as glamorous and exciting out on the street, it's pretty good stuff inside. So hopefully you'll be able to see pockets of areas throughout the campus that were prioritized for new paint, carpet, improvements and upgrades. In some areas, replacing older furniture with newer furniture. In the grounds department, just going through, we are in the commitment to be very drought conscious, so sometimes it's difficult to maintain the level of grounds appearance that we've had in the past, but our staff has done a fabulous job of really taking all of that seriously and making a commitment to making sure that all 3 of our campuses are green and clean and prepared for us to come back and entertain a full fall semester. A couple of projects. We have a solar farm project. You'll see it under construction partly on the Visalia campus. On our south parking lot, there's solar overhang structures going in, and that's being done in conjunction with a chunk of land that we opened up on the Tulare campus for an entire small solar farm. So we're getting into that business now. We're taking advantage of those interest-free loans from the government and those rebates in order to capture solar energy, supply that energy to our campuses, and of course save energy, but also save costs going forward for our utilities. So a special thank you to all of the folks who worked hard this summer to make sure that we not only did summer school, but prepared for a great fall semester. So I think this is the point in the presentation where you'll probably be relieved to hear that as we were getting ready and putting slides together for today, Dr. Lacerna pulled me aside and she said, Stan, I need to tell you that we're going to have everybody in the General Assembly this year for 2 hours, and we've got this special guest coming to speak, highly recommended by our faculty from having visited and seen and heard him at plenary last year. So it's going to be really tight. It's a tight timeline. Probably won't have time for any of your stand-up comedy. You might not be able to tell any stories about the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Raiders or the 49ers. We might not be able to hear about your childhood. So you'll be relieved to know that Jennifer already gave me the 411 on not doing any of that. I did go school clothes shopping this year, though. And, growing up as a kid, we always shopped in the discount stores. Back then, it was Thrifty or TG&Y. Right now, today the discount stores are Ross. Great places. Old habits die hard. I still go to Ross. So I was in there last week. And I thought, man, it's been hot. It's going to continue to be hot. So I'm looking for some dress shirts and I'm looking for some undershirts. And when you're looking for undershirts as a man and you're going to wear them under your dress shirt, you want something thin, not too hot. So I'm cruising down the aisles and I come across these great looking undershirts. And you know, what's ironic is back in the day when we would see these, we would call these the old man t-shirts. Yeah. Now I wear those. Okay? And I was so excited, I bought right into the advertising scheme. I went, man, if I put that on, I'm going to look like that. So I got home, and much to my dismay, I strapped one on, and I thought, you know, they need to change the picture on that for us old guys. And when I looked in the mirror, this is what I saw. But you'll be happy to know that Ross is where name brand clothes go to die, right? Can you imagine being a shirt on the shelf in Macy's or Nordstrom? I often wonder if it's like one of those Toy Story toys on the shelf and nobody's in there, and they're talking to each other, going, oh man, I hear the worker coming. Where do you think we're getting moved to? Well, I hope maybe it's just over to sportswear. No, they have a hand truck. We might be going to Ross. So you'll understand that when I show you this next shot, why I saw a big stack of these shirts on sale at Ross. Right? And here's the saddest thing. They weren't even buying them at Ross. And there was a buy one, get one free sale. All right, Jennifer, that's all for now. Every year we give you a quick snapshot of the budget. This year the state budget is good. We've heard it, the news is out. Yay, there's support for community college, there's support for K-14. Let's not have a short memory though. We've all been through the California cycles of funding. We've recognized that our economy is tied to some revenue sources that ebb and flow. And so there's going to be another down cycle. The economists and the futurists are already trending that, and they're showing us when that next recession is likely to cycle around. So we have to be careful. In good times, we have to recognize that we just came out of a really bitter, hard recession, and we have to be careful. The other thing that's happened is the money now is coming, and I think the legislature's gotten that same message, it's coming to us more restricted. Okay, so with the new funding, you're going to hear about us getting money that we used to call growth. Now they call it access. It's to increase access for students. In reality, it's funding to help restore the full-time obligation number that was frozen for us, that we were forgiven from during the recession. So one of the new expenses that's coming with the new money is we have to meet a formula now that says this is the full-time obligation number you have to maintain full-time faculty positions. That's a good thing. That's bringing back positions we lost. And at one time, we were down over 20 full-time positions. The next new required expense is that there are outcomes for student success. We've got to spend money in areas that we can demonstrate are having a positive effect on the success indicators that we're going to look at in just a minute. We've been talking a lot about them. They shouldn't sound new to you, but I constantly remind everybody when I talk about our budget, yes, we're getting new money, but we're also accountable for that money in different ways. We're also required to reach outcomes now for student equity. And we're going to narrow our focus in a minute this morning as we lead into the presentation from our guest speaker. And it's going to be about the new definition of student equity. And then finally, you'll know this is very important to us, but there's been a shift. The state retirement system for teachers and for public employees has been compromised in its funding. And so instead of the state continually being obligated to try to keep those funds whole, they're shifting the cost of that to local entities, to local districts. So we will now begin to pay a greater contribution as an employer to the cost of our PERS and our STRS retirement systems. Those percentages incrementally go up over the next couple years, and we have to take the new money that they're giving us and pay those bills first. Okay, so the next segment that we try to spend a little time with each year is a play on the words, of course, stop and smell the roses. Let's take a minute, let's pause, let's look at what's been very successful for us. We call it stop and smell the sequoias. So first of all, you may remember last spring, we did the student satisfaction survey. Internally, we talk about this as the mother lode survey. A big survey, our research department, led by Dr. Oster, did a survey of all the surveys that we normally do in all of our different programs for special groups and for general population and so on. And we worked through a collaborative process to consolidate that into one major survey so that our students were not getting survey fatigue, that we would get better returns, that we could get a better sampling size, etc. I think by all accounts, it was a great success. Normally, our past record would show that we would put surveys out. If we've got 10,000 students, we'd get 500 surveys back. We'd get 700 surveys back. We'd be excited. This year, with the student satisfaction survey, it was student support and services survey, we got 2,400 responses back. So we had a great survey size, we got great comments, and one of the things that I wanted to share, there's a lot of data in there. You should be looking at it because it should be used for things that we're looking at in our programs, in our program review, in our services, in our proposals for above-base funding. This is one of those databases. But there's a series of items in there that when you combine them are defined as student satisfaction. It has to do with service, interaction with classes and faculty, rigor of courses. There's some wonderful things that come together to tell us, when you add these up, how satisfied are our students. And in the column for satisfied or very satisfied, when you put those two together, we have some fantastic results. And we were able to break it down by individual campus. So if you look at the Visalia campus, we had a 96% satisfied or very satisfied student response to the overall experience they have at College of the Sequoias. For the Tulare campus, 96% satisfaction. For the Hanford campus, 99% satisfaction. And I can tell you, Dr. Robinson's been on the phone nonstop to find that one student. So when we add that up overall, College of the Sequoias is sporting a 97% student satisfaction rate. That's a great statistic for us. These are probably the most exciting things to read. We have over 3,269, Dolly made me memorize the number, over 3,000 comments. And of course they range from everything. But to celebrate this morning, you need to know that there were a number of outstanding responses from our students. And you've got to look at any survey, you've got to look at the high, the low, and you pull that stuff that's in the center. I was not a successful student in high school. Now that I'm 25 and just decided to come back to school, I was concerned the transition would be overwhelming. Every experience since the moment I filled out the application at COS has been like butter on bread. That's a meta. COS is an academically challenging institution. I hold a BS degree in business administration, which I achieved at Fresno State, and the level of academic competitiveness from COS is right up there with CSU caliber institution. Congratulations, man, that's a great comment. The professors at COS are the best. Most take interest in their students and they seem to enjoy what they're doing. Professors like them are an inspiration. We're very lucky to have them. And we hear that all the time. All the teachers and professors I've had have been great, and I'm very happy that COS is fully accredited. Yeah, we wrote the student back since, so are we. COS has everything available in order to help me succeed and feel confident on campus and make me feel comfortable to ask anything. And that's the message we espouse at the Giant Days orientation. What we tell our students is we're here, we have a ton of services and support for you, but you have to come and get it. You have to access. There's a lot of you and only a few of us. Don't be afraid to ask. So it's nice to see this. Okay, no convocation would be complete without one glance at our hieroglyphic. I think we all understand now this is our integrated planning model that governs our institution. This last year was a really great year for us. We went through a collaborative process, reviewed, revised, and reaffirmed our mission statement, as was set forth in our integrated planning manual. In alignment with that, we went through a collaborative process and developed our new 10-year master plan. It has goals established for us, and those goals are now going to drive smaller, shorter strategic plans. The first 3-year strategic plan is finished. We have clear district objectives that are measurable, and under each of those objectives, we have a series of planned actions that we're going to be able to look at, measure annually, revise, and update. So in a 10-year span, we'll do 3-year strategic plans, and we'll be monitoring our progress for those annually. Everything that we're doing is aligned with and consistent with the new requirements we have statewide as community college institution. The SSSP, which is our student success plan, the SEP, which is our requirements for student equity. And of course, all of it driven by data, reflecting the needs of our students. So let's go to those big picture items that put the frame around this for us, those state success indicators. Remember our Student Success Scorecard. This was a result of the Student Success Act of 2012. There was a huge statewide Student Success Task Force. They studied the indicators of success for students that matriculate well in community college. And those gray boxes across the top third of the page are the most frequent indicators of student success that came to the top of that research. And they became the benchmark for us to start to align our resources to. So real quickly, remember what they are. Persistence, by definition, are students who consistently enroll fall to fall. So what we learned is students who finish a fall semester and enroll immediately in the next fall semester have a higher percentage of success and completion. 30-unit mark. We learned that students who complete 30 units, for some reason that's a tipping point, and that's the motivation. They incrementally are more successful once they complete those 30 units. And then, of course, the actual completion of the degree and the transfer requirements. Remember what remedial is. It's not passing our remedial courses. It's how well do students pass our college level courses after they've been in our prerequisite classes. And then finally, completion of our career technical certificates and certifications. So those are the big anchors statewide that are driving all of the resources, the student success money, the student equity money, and putting a frame around our master plan goals and our district objectives. Okay, now we're going to narrow our focus just a little bit. There's been a statewide shift, and I think we're hearing about it, and we've talked a lot about it. And it's from student access to student success. And in the past, and I'd say a decade ago or so, maybe more recently in the last 7 years or so, the big push for community colleges was to make sure that every student had equal access. All students had the same opportunities. And so opportunity was the focus. That's what we measured. Remember when we were trying to get as many students enrolled as possible, as many different programs started as possible, as many different degree options, as many different certificate options. It was all about access. What we didn't measure during that era is the outcome. So we were consistent with creating equal access, but we were also accepting a variety of different outcomes. Some students could pass, and some could fail. Some students could complete, and some could not. Some students could make transfer, and some could not. It isn't that we didn't measure those things, but that wasn't what we were accountable for. So the shift now to student success is actually flipping that model. We are now, when you look at those indicators across that scorecard, accountable for the whole variety of different students achieving the same outcome. A whole different paradigm, really. So our student equity plan kind of sets forth a new definition for fair. under this state model. Fair is no longer that all students have the same opportunity. Rather, it's that each student receives what they need to achieve the same outcome. That's a pretty big deal if you think about it, because there are a number of things about a student achieving the outcome that we as an institution and us individually as faculty might not have any control over. And so we have to think about that as a system. And we have to recognize that it's our responsibility to hold up the ideal. We're the professional educators in the community. We want to make sure that we don't prejudge students and cast them one way or another. We don't sort and select and go, you're good, you'll make it, and you're not, you won't. And so we have to think about what do we do with our work and what do we do with our systems that allow us to understand how best to meet the needs of students more individually based on what they need, or in groups, what do they need, so that they can all achieve the same level of success. It's a pretty daunting concept as it starts to sink in. So we're trying to think about how to do it and talk about it in simple ways. And this is a little picture. I think it's not only cute, but it's a great graphic. And it's about moving from equality to what we are calling this new definition of equity or fairness. These are three little guys trying to get a peek over the fence at watching the baseball game. It happens to be the COS Giants playing Fresno City. The score right now is 9-1 Giants. And you can see that in them trying to sneak a peek, under the previous definition, when everybody gets the same opportunity, they're all given a box to stand on and try to peek over and see the game. But based on the individual students, they don't all make it, right? They don't all get to see the game. So redistribution of those resources, taking a look at the individual students, you can recognize by stacking those three boxes differently, we get the opportunity for all three of those students based on their individual needs to be able to get a peek at that game. It's a simple metaphor, but it's one that helps us start to think about what we have to do in both our individual delivery and as a college and as a system. And being among the shorter folks around, I'm pretty glad that there's that redistribution, because we know he would get there. He would get to see the game, right? And when I walk down the hall with these guys, we know he's going to see the game. So I want the two darn boxes. So when we think about our students now, and we think about what they need, individual subgroups of students and what they need, the new word you're going to hear, it's not like we used it in the 60s. In the 60s, if you said, hey, I dig it, dig was a cool word, right? Now we're talking about DIG as an acronym, disproportionately impacted groups. So here's what we had to do for our student equity plan. We had to determine the average achievement of our student population. And the average achievement of our student population was in those success areas that we saw on the scorecard. So let's take completion rates, for example. We have an average completion rate here of all students. We had to take a look then at individual subgroups of students, breaking them down by ethnicity, by gender, by socioeconomic status. And we had to look at them, and as a subgroup, if they weren't achieving at least as high as the average of all of our students, they were designated under this legislation as a disproportionately impacted group. So they're now the focus. They're me. They're the guy that needs two boxes. Okay? And so as we look at who we are now, we went to our master plan and we said, okay, let's take a look at our data. Here's what we know about our region. TKC out there, Tulare Kings County. 30% of all residents in Tulare and Kings County that are age 25 or older right now have not graduated from high school. Okay? I get it. You know, there's a gasp. That same statistic is about 18% statewide. So we ask ourselves, so what makes that number so high here? Why in Tulare and Kings County is that 25 and older number higher here? We may have some assumptions, but let's look at the data. Let's tease it apart a little bit deeper. Are they high school dropouts? Is our K-12 system really doing that poorly? Well, we go to the Department of Education statistics on graduation rates, and they run 1 year behind. So their 2014 graduates from high school, we have an 82% graduation rate in Tulare-Kings County, which is compared to 81% statewide. We graduate at a higher percentage in the Central Valley than the average across the state. And when you look at the demographic of our students coming in, 8 out of 10, after spending that time in our system, is a pretty good statistic when you stack it up against the challenges that we face. Language, poverty, transiency. And so there's a lot of concentration in our region on getting that graduation number up. We say to ourselves, well, and I mean this with all due respect, but we have a lot of minority students. So we know Hispanic students, for example, which is our largest subgroup, might graduate at lower rates. Here's the stat. In 2014, the graduation rate for Hispanics in Tulare-Kings County, 81%. Statewide, 77. To me, because you know I had a life in K-12, it makes perfect sense that we graduate Hispanic students at a higher rate than the rest of the state, because we concentrate a ton of resources on that. Migrant education, Title I, ESL programs, that's our focus. So we've already started putting more boxes, stacking more boxes under those students to get them to this graduation rate. So we know that there's an over 25 population that doesn't graduate from high school. It doesn't look like it's the students coming out of our high schools. So who is it? When we look at the data this year under AB 86 for our merger with the adult education programs, we clearly saw it. It jumped right off the page at us. About every 3 years, there's a migration of newcomers to the Central Valley. They're newcomers from other countries, predominantly Mexico and or Southeast Asia, and they're older, 23, 24, 25, and have not graduated high school here. Big population. Why are they coming? Farm work. So as long as we're going to feed the world, as long as this is going to be breadbasket for America and the rest of the country and the rest of the United States, we're going to have an influx every 3 years of 24, 25, 26-year-old workers, farm workers, who never even attended our schools. So as an old K-12 guy, I felt a lot better. It's like, my gosh, okay, because I wore that anchor around me for a long time thinking that has to be that we're not graduating enough students. And it wasn't the case. So we may or may not be getting those 25 and older into College of the Sequoias because they can come to college. But that's the population of non-high school graduates, not the students that are coming through our local school systems. I personally felt better to know that. And that's the reason you've heard us for the last couple of years say our biggest approach now should be to reach out and get our high school students to come to COS. They're the stable population regardless of the economy. So who's college ready in that bunch of graduates? College ready for a high school student means that you've done like these young people have done right here. You've passed all the requirements, the A to G requirements to be eligible for admission to CSU or UC. In Tulare County, 34% of the seniors have met that requirement. In Kings County, it's 30%. So roughly 1 out of 3 students are meeting that college prep requirement. Statewide, it's a better number. So that's an area where I know we're working hard in K-12. That's an area that we should pay attention to because we may or may not be getting that 34 and 30% of those high school seniors from our local high schools that are college ready. We got a bunch of them this year. We may or may not be getting them, but that's going to be part of our target. But we are getting that other 70%, or some portion of that other 70%. So we know they're going to need a couple more boxes to stand on. So who are we specifically? It's 59.7% Hispanic, the current demographic for College of the Sequoias, our current population. We're 56% female. That's not a new statistic. More and more women are becoming the majority of enrollees in colleges across the country. Yeah, go ladies. 66% of our student population is under the age of 21. So 2/3 of our students, roughly, are under the age of 24. We're not having to incur that whole 25 and older population without a high school diploma. And then this is a stunning statistic, really, of the students who are first-time students to College of the Sequoias, 70% of them are the first in their family to attend college. And it's not just our minority kids. It is, by and large, our Hispanic students, but it's not just them. When you pull that apart, and you take a look at our white, non-Hispanic, 57% of our white, non-Hispanic are the first in their family to attend college. 1 out of every 2. So that's something we have to think about. A lot of our students, regardless of subgroup, are the first to attend college. That should speak to us about our outreach, the types of support systems we give them, the vocabulary that we have to use with them. Can you imagine a first-time student who hasn't been to college, doesn't have a family culture of college, coming in and encountering some of our acronyms, some of the systems that we have? So we have to be thinking about those as some of the boxes we need to build to put under those students. So this is what kind of the image that conjures up in our minds when we think of that first generation of college students coming. It's usually our Hispanic students because that's our largest subgroup. It's the field worker families that come. And when I think about those students and I think about what they encounter, I can tell you this. I can tell you that farm worker family, generally speaking, is a hardworking family. Of course, we know that. It's also a family where there's not an understanding in the household by the parents of the nuances of college and even the concept of college. Those of us who have worked with our students individually, and all of us have, we've taken a student under our wing and we've understood that if they were the first out of their family to come to college and their parents were farm workers, that when they turned 18, when they graduated from high school, they're especially the young men, their fathers expected them to work. And so we've had lots of conversations as Puente mentors and personal mentors and faculty mentors. We've all had these conversations, right, with students' parents. I know Dr. Lucerna's gone into the home of the young ladies that she mentors and explained to the Hispanic parents the nuances of college. That for a young Latina female leading a first-generation farm worker family, you're not sending her to the other edge of the world. You're not turning her over to the establishment. And so we have to think about the things that they need. And I know that we do that. I think this is an opportunity for us to redouble those efforts for those first-generation farm worker families. The other idea I want to plant in our minds, and I have to share this with you, it's not a specific name or a person, but just remember when we set up our systems and when we expect certain core values to have been mastered by students, that sometimes they're not built in to their daily lives. The concept of deferred gratification, we learned that from Dr. Ruby Payne when she was here, that young people in poverty, families in poverty live for the moment because the moment is all they have. And so when we think about deferred gratification, work hard now for something that'll pay off later, we have to teach that. When we think about motivation to learn academically, we have to teach that. And a lot of us get a little nervous when I think of myself as an instructor. You know, my job is to present the content. My job is to make sure that you have a good environment to learn. My job is to be here for my office hours. But whether or not you're motivated, that's on you. Sometimes there's things that we can do to stimulate that motivation that we should be thinking about. I mentor students in the Puente program. I have an opportunity to take students home. 2 years ago, I was working with a young man out of Dinuba. He wasn't in our Puente program. And when I got the opportunity to take him home, this was his house. And the house itself didn't stun me that much. I came from a poor background. But something that I wanted to point out is when we pulled up to the driveway, he was so excited because this little trailer had been pulled in, and he got in there, he got his own bedroom. And so when I thought about going home to do homework, you know, and he showed me inside, and we sat inside, and of course it's 104 degrees outside. It was only 111 in there. but there was an oscillating fan. It helped me remember that we have to put some different boxes under different students. And then this is a little house on a street, again, in Dinuba. It's 1272 Magnolia Way. And this is a little different generation of Hispanic in our region. This family was first generation, grandparents came here, but the students themselves were born here. In American schools, learned English, Spanish wasn't their first language, came through the school system, but the family encountered what a lot of families encounter in poverty, and that's some level of dysfunction, a little bit of domestic violence, alcoholism, but the saviors in this family were the grandparents. And these were the first generation grandparents who were right out of Mexico, farm workers, retired here in the Central Valley because they knew the Central Valley from working Highway 99 and picking the fruit. And it was on $385 a month of Social Security that they had a family of 7. And this little wood stove in the back is where we cooked breakfast on Saturday mornings. In the Spanish culture, we call them abuelita, abuelito, or in our vernacular, this was my nana and tata. And so, here's what I can tell you about growing up in that environment. Hard workers, some dysfunction, sure. Aunts and uncles, a train wreck. My dad, an alcoholic. My mom passed away when I was 8. So there was all kinds of reasons for me to be in big trouble. But what they instilled in me was, go to school, work hard, turn 18, be ready to be on your own. They never discouraged college, but they couldn't encourage college. They didn't know the culture. And so one of my most memorable experiences in school, in kind of learning my way through the school system, was in my freshman year at Dinuba High School. We were in the locker room one day, my friend and I, it was the last period of the day. We had PE because sports players, athletes had PE the last period of the day, and then you would oftentimes go to your practice. We were done, we were changing, we were putting our street clothes back on. I looked over and I saw my friend Mark Chalakian, Armenian kid, great kid. He had his little book bag, I had my book bag. We're pulling our books out of our locker. He has a book for his science class as a freshman. It was biology. I pulled my book out, it was general science. And I looked at him and I go, Mark, how come you have a biology book and I'm in general science? And he says, well, I'm in all the classes you need to be ready to go to college. And I'm sitting there, 14 years old, going, what? There's certain classes we're supposed to take to go to college? He said, yeah. Did you talk to your counselor? Well, we didn't. We got a schedule sent to us. We were supposed to pick up our schedule the first day of school. We followed the herd. So the next morning, that was the last period of the day. The next morning, I got up, took a shower, got dressed. I went to school. I went right into the counseling office on South Campus. True story, you guys. Mrs. Trevoli, she was the counselor secretary. Great lady. Miss Trevoli sitting there. She said, good morning, Stan. I said, I'm Mr. Trevoli. I want to see Mr. Potts. That was my counselor. Great name, right, Mr. Potts? Bald guy, old military guy. Wasn't every counselor in the Army back then? And she says, oh, okay, well, fill out that blue card on the desk right there and put it in this box, and Mr. Potts will call you in later today. So I go up there with the little golf pencil they had, and I fill out my name on the card, and I put it in the box, and I come right back here against the wall. Her desk is sitting where you guys are, and I sit down in the chair by the wall. She looks over and she says, oh, no, Stan, you can go ahead and go to class. Mr. Potts will call you in later today. I'm like, nah, it's all right, I'll wait. And she kind of looks at me and says, so now we're going to flip sides. I'm Mrs. Trevoli, right? She turns around, she goes to the phone, 211. Mr. Potts, yeah, there's a student here to see you. Stan Carasosa, freshman? Yeah, I told him you would call him, and he said no, he's going to wait. So she hangs up, Mr. Potts opens the door, you know, like the military counselor does. Stand! I felt like Norm in Cheers. Stand! Come on in. Sits down. So, what can I do for you? I said, hey, Mr. Potts, I want to know why I'm not in the classes to go to college. He goes, well, I don't know, let's see. So he reaches back, he pulls open his file drawer, and he starts through his manila folders. Pulls mine out, flips it open. Well, your grades in junior high were pretty good. You know, you qualified there. Flips the page over. The test scores on the CTBS test, those were good scores. He says, wait a minute. So he goes back into the drawer and he goes further back into the file. And then I realized they're by freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Way back in the seniors, he pulls up a folder. He opens it up and goes, we just enrolled you in all the same classes we enroll your brother in. My brother was a senior that year. He was, by the way, the quintessential lowrider. That was Steve. Yeah, he wanted general math, general science, 3 periods of auto. And so here I am. I don't even know it as a freshman because I didn't get an appointment. I got my schedule mailed to me. I didn't know that there were classes for college. And you know what I realized at that moment? Because I said, well, that's not gonna fly. He said, well, it's not too late. Of course, it was already halfway through my freshman year. He says, we're gonna have to put a plan together to get you qualified for college, and we'll start with those classes next year. So I'm a year behind everybody else grinding this out. In my sophomore year, I'm taking what I should have took as a freshman. In my junior year, I'm taking what I should have took as a sophomore. In my senior year, everybody, all my senior friends, they're on half-day schedule. I'm going to take 2+2 class at Reed College. You know, we don't come back after lunch. You know, I'm sitting there with juniors in Algebra 2. But we did it. And so the thing that I realized as I got older, became an educator and looked back, they batch scheduled us. All the kids with Hispanic surnames that came from 1272 Magnolia Way got scheduled into vocational education. And when I think about it, it's what I call now, they were doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. Because the hearts of these people were ginormous. They felt like because we were Hispanic kids, poverty, the assumption was language barrier or some level of dysfunction. If we put them in college prep, they'll die. They won't make it. They're not ready. Let's not do that to them. And so I think their motivation was right, but unfortunately I think the decision was wrong. But it was how the system was built back then. So that was an institutional prejudice that I vowed when I became a K-12 educator, and even more so a principal and a superintendent, to overcome and to make sure we lived through our systems and we didn't have any false expectations. False meaning low, too low. And so that was important to me. Back to the point of my story, Mama and Tata knew nothing about that. They didn't go to the school. They didn't even go to our events, our games. Fortunately, we lived about 2 blocks from the high school, and my grandfather would sit on his lawn chair in the front yard and listen to our football games over the loudspeaker. And he was so good at that when we got home, he could tell us if we did well or not. He heard that name Perazosa if you scored a touchdown or you did something. He also heard if you got a penalty or got kicked out. He was running the game down to us, but they didn't know about college. And I think now, even our California-born minority kids, white, brown, Asian, Hispanic, African-American, if they're coming to us from conditions of some level of poverty and first generation, we have to give them different boxes. And so today's message was really all about that. It was an opportunity for us to remember that this student equity push now, this funding, is a new opportunity for us. We've done lots of great things in the past. Let's look at that data, let's learn from it, and let's apply new strategies, because what we need now is a different outcome. We can't just do the same things, we've got to vary the inputs. because the outcome is that everybody achieved at higher levels, at the same higher levels. And that's going to be a challenge for us. I think the collective wisdom, though, on this faculty, and I know you saw it in the comments right there from our students, the collective hearts of this faculty will save and reach our students. We just need to pull together and invest these resources in ways that make a fabulous difference. So that's my message for us today. I want to put one slide up before I begin the introduction of our guest presenter. We're going to be here for the next little while now to listen to our presenter, and he, I believe, will build very nicely on the message and the information that I just shared with you. But when we break, right at or a little before 10 o'clock, this is kind of our lineup. Departments have regular meetings scheduled. Administrative services staff, all admin services staff, will report to the Ponderosa. Student services, all student services staff will be able to remain here. And then in addition, for a lunch meeting today, as you listen to our guest speaker, you'll have the opportunity to also have a more intimate setting with him and a continued conversation with him in Hospital Rock 134. And we'll remind you of that as we close. So let me start the introduction of our guest speaker today. And Dr. Lacerna is going to come up and help me transition the PowerPoint. Professor Tyrone C. Howard, he's a PhD, is the director of the Black Male Institute for the Graduate School of Education Information Studies at UCLA. He's the author of several books and publishings. Most recently, 2010 publication of the book called Why Race and Culture Matters in Schools, Closing the Achievement Gap in America's Classrooms. Perfect topic for us today, perfect insights. He comes highly recommended, and I want to thank the faculty this last year who were at the plenary session, who came back and said very excitedly, if there's any way we could get Dr. Howard to come and talk with us, he would be a perfect speaker for the work that we're doing here at College of the Sequoias. So those faculty who attended the State Academic Senate plenary in the spring of 2015, they were inspired by his remarks, and I want to thank them very much for the recommendation. So we're delighted to have with us today Dr. Tyrone Howard. Let's give him a warm College of the Sequoias welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Can we give your president another, can we give him a round of applause? That was great. You know, everyone doesn't have the ability to really captivate an audience. I thought that was great. I mean, you had me hanging on every word there, Stan. It's inspiring. Good stuff. So how's everyone doing this morning? Yeah. It is my honor and my privilege to be here with you this morning. I always have warm feelings of appreciation and reflection whenever I come and step on a community college campus. And I feel that way because my educational roots are tied into institutions such as this one. And part of what I think we have to remember, and what I want to spend some time talking with you about today, is that institutions can be great places. And programs can be amazing sort of components to have on institutions. But what really makes institutions and programs work are the people. That's you. Institutions aren't what they are. Programs aren't what they are unless there are individuals who are concerned and committed and who care about the individuals who come to places like this in order to make their academic or educational aspirations come true. So as I get started, before I get started, I always ask for this small little, somewhat corny thing for folks to do, and I hope you don't mind engaging me for about 5 seconds. If you would not mind, if you could turn to the person to your left or to your right and just tell her or him thank you for doing what you do. Can you do that for me, please? Thank you. I want to educators and folks who work with educational institutions get nearly as much credit as you deserve. I think we are picked upon, we are prodded, we are criticized and critiqued, and I think we deserve better. I think we deserve better because this is what I oftentimes say is God's work, especially when you do it in a community college. And I say that because I believe that these institutions that we are currently sitting on the campus of right now are what I refer to as the beacons of educational democracy. What I mean by that is that these institutions really don't judge you. They don't care about your home life. They don't care about your grades from years past. They don't care about how you've done on test scores. And what's beautiful about that is it gives individuals a chance. It gives individuals a chance who have oftentimes been written off by society. So I think about that in my own personal story, much like Stan talked about, because it was my father who came here from rural Louisiana back in 1960. Very subpar education, did not have the kind of academic training and background that ideally he should have had, but he wanted something better for himself. He wanted something that he didn't know how to access. He wanted to figure out how he could make a way so that perhaps his children or his children's children would have the opportunities that he could only think and dream about. He had spent all his time in rural Louisiana, working in fields, doing back-breaking labor, much like what Stan talked about today with what we see with farm workers here in the state. But he took a chance, and he took the willingness to come to California because he wanted to find something better. And he oftentimes tells a story about going to City College, 19 years old, in this big place called California. It seemed like a world away from where he grew up in a small little rural town in Louisiana. But he came here scared, uncertain, insecure, frightened beyond belief, but he came with the vision and the dream of what he would hope he could accomplish with this thing called education. He talks about going to City College in Los Angeles. And he talked about the fact that he didn't know what to ask, who to ask, and if he was even in the right place, because he was assuming that he would be told that he was not cut out for education. And he tells this story and says, but the folks at City College just made me feel like $1 million. Because when I walked on that campus, they smiled, they greeted me, they encouraged me, they gave me direction, they gave me advice. And he always talks about, with all his educational aspirations and all his professional accomplishments, he says it all started at Los Angeles City College. Because there were folks there who did not judge him based on his past. They did not write him off based on what he did not accomplish in high school. So that's why what you do is so important. Because you were the individual, and you represent the type of individuals who let individuals who come from humble beginnings know that there's something that they can accomplish. So that's why I thank you, because I ultimately was able to benefit from my father's trajectory because of folks at institutions such as City College. I then went through the same path as my father, had a little bit more opportunity, a little bit more exposure, but I have to say I spent my time at 4 different community colleges. Part of what I want to talk to you about today is that those are some of the students that you see. You are seeing some students who are in their 3rd, 4th college in 3 or 4 years, right? They are still trying to find a way. I attended Cerritos College, Long Beach City College, LA Southwest College, Compton College, trying to find a way. And part of what I want you to understand is that what you do is so important because oftentimes you are the glue that's keeping a student from saying, you know what, I can hold on to this dream or I can just let it go and figure out something else. So what you do, no matter if you're a staff person, if you work in financial aid, if you work in support services, if you're, it doesn't matter your title, it doesn't matter your education credentials. What you say and what you do to these young people here makes a huge difference, a significant difference. And so what I want to spend my time talking with you about today is that what we have to understand are the very daunting challenges that we face as we do this work. I understand that this work is difficult. I understand that this work is challenging. But we do this work because we're talking about how we invest in our futures. We do this work because we're talking about the ways in which other folks invested in us, and that's why we're here today. We're talking about why we do this work because we are here because of the folks who sacrifice, who dreamed, who hoped, who prayed that one day their children or their children's children would have the opportunity to say that they have something called education. It is the vehicle we describe as the pathway for upward mobility. So what you do matters. And please don't take this lightly because you are in the place where individuals are hoping that you give them some semblance of of direction and some semblance of hope that they can somehow maximize their life dreams. So understand what you do, and I want to walk you through some things. I spent time in K-12 education, and I want you to understand that the student that you work with every day, the student that you see, despite what others might suggest to you or despite what others might tell you, you have some of the most intelligent, brilliant, resilient young people on this planet. And what you've got to remember is that somehow you've got to remind them of that. Because see, the issue that I had, like many of you in this room could probably relate to when you were younger, is that sometimes you just got to get out of your own way, right? Sometimes you got to just convince yourself that you are capable. Sometimes you got to tell yourself that you are talented enough. And sometimes you just need someone who sees something in you that says you have what it takes to do whatever you put your mind to. That's the role that you can play. That's the role that many of you are already playing. And I want to just continue to encourage you to do that because we have some challenges that we have to be mindful of. I think Stan's presentation earlier, I think hit perfectly on some of these equity challenges that we have to face. And so what I want us to understand is that while we are products of our circumstances, we do not have to be defined by them. Understand that we have lots of young people who have come through some very difficult circumstances, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. However, just because young people have gone through difficult circumstances does not mean that that dictates their destiny. And that's why your roles are important, because what you do in small conversations, be it during office hours, passing a student on the campus, a brief exchange while you're getting lunch, those words can mean the world to a student because, again, you're walking on a campus where there are lots of people with unlimited potential, but a host of doubt in their minds, a lot of uncertainty in their hearts about, can I do this? Am I good enough? I make the argument that a lot of folks here, and you all can probably relate, we're oftentimes walking around what is referred to as the imposter syndrome. That's what I have, right? How many folks can relate to the imposter syndrome, right? I'm walking around here, I don't think I'm smart enough. If I just act the part, if I just look the part, maybe nobody will find me, right? That sound familiar? I'll just go along to get along. I don't want to say anything in class, because if I open my mouth up and say the wrong thing, then the secret is out the bag. He doesn't belong, right? Many of the students that you work with are talented beyond words, but they are victims, and they suffer from that notion called the imposter syndrome. And they suffer from that because oftentimes when you talk about different marginalized groups, there's been a larger narrative that has consistently told them that they don't measure up, right? Whether you are poor, you don't measure up. If you're a language learner, you're not good enough. If you're the son and daughters of immigrants, you don't belong. If you're a person of color, not quite equipped. If you're a woman, you fall short. And some folks have all 4 or 5 of those things that fit who they are. Can you imagine that? So that's why you've got to somehow offset what society has oftentimes done to dictate how folks begin to see themselves. These narratives can do a number on us. And what I want you to understand is that the challenge we have is that systems and structures matter, right? Systems and structures are what oftentimes provides opportunity for us, or in some cases denies opportunity for certain students. Systems and structures can be dismantled by people like yourselves. Systems and structures can be enhanced when you help students understand how to navigate, how to ask questions, who to talk to. See, these are things that many of us now kind of know and we take for granted, but the students that you're working with oftentimes have not had anyone who's modeled that for them, would not share with them the hidden curriculum of how you not take no for an answer. I love Stan's story about waiting for that counselor, right? Most of us would have said, okay, well, he'll call me, I'll leave, right? But he insisted, he stayed. He said, I want some explanations. I want an answer. Oftentimes, in many communities of color, we're told to basically adhere to authority. So if someone tells you to go back to class, what do? Go back to class. But there's something about that defiance. I call it a polite defiance, if you will, right? To say, no, I think I need to have an explanation or an answer. I want to understand why I'm not in the biology class like my peer is. I want to understand how I can be on the college prep track, right? These are the things that are part of systems and structures that we have to help our students be able to understand and navigate so that they can create a better pathway for themselves. So let me tell you why I'm concerned. I'm concerned because I spent a lot of time in K-12 classrooms. And I wonder why we don't see more of the representation of this state on college campuses like we should, because we are one of the most diverse states in the world, right? When we walk on our college campuses, we don't see that same kind of diversity in terms of its success. What we know, unfortunately, and it pains me to say this, if we look at community colleges across this state, most of the students who start programs on community colleges will not complete them. And if you're from a poor background, a person of color, or a woman, you're even less likely to complete a transfer or a certification. We've got to ask, how do we change that? How do we fix that? So we create more pathways of opportunity. Now, I want to give you a snapshot of classrooms in the United States. Like I said, I study K-12 education, and I want to help you understand why your jobs are so important and why what you do matters so much. But I also want you to understand structures and systems that make your jobs more difficult. See, oftentimes we point the finger at folks who we blame who are not responsible for the problems that we see in our society. You get asked to fix problems that you did not create. You get asked to somehow amend situations that you did not put in motion in the first place. Now, part of what I want you to understand is that when you talk about the challenges that you have on your campus, oftentimes it's directly tied to systems and structures that we as a society have not responded to. So if we look at our classrooms in the United States, I'm going to give you a snapshot. We currently have 56.5 million students in public schools in this country. About 5 million in private schools, and now we have about 2.5 million who are being homeschooled. That number is rising. I want to focus on the 56.5 million who are in public schools across this country. And I want to give you a snapshot of some of the challenges and the systems and structures that they face, which makes your jobs even more challenging when they come to you. So if we were to take the entire 56.5 million students who are in public schools across this country and shrink it down to a classroom of 30, with all ratios and proportions being the same, this is what our classroom would look like. What we know is that 10 out of the 30 students would live in poverty. Again, depending on where you do this work, that number could be as high as 30 out of 30. I would argue that poverty is arguably the single biggest challenge to helping students reach their academic potential. However, while it is a challenge, we must be unequivocally clear and unabashedly apologetic that just because young people grow up in poverty does not mean they cannot be academically successful. If you do not believe that, if you don't in your heart of hearts believe that poor kids can be successful, you should not be doing this work. You should not be serving this population. Because if that were the case, I'm willing to bet that many folks in this room would not be here right now. If that were the case, I would not stand here before you right now. So I maintain in some cases, when we talk about poverty, we tend to put this narrative out that says that poor kids don't have. I make the argument that it's quite to the contrary. I think that people who grow up in poverty have what I refer to as a sixth sense. Because you have to figure out how to do what? Say it again with me. Survive. You survive. You make a way out of no way. You learn how to problem solve. You learn how to take a little bit of nothing and make it go a long way. I'm amazed when I see a single mother of 4 kids who's working on minimum wage, if that. But those kids never go hungry. They're always clothed. They always have a roof over their head. To me, that is talent. That is giftedness. So I cannot have anybody subscribe to this notion that poor people can't, poor people don't, poor people are unable to. In many ways, poor people are the most intellectually gifted people that we may even surround ourselves with. Now, they may not understand the structures and systems of an institution like this, but they understand something bigger, which is called the game of life. Right? Understand that because young people come from impoverished backgrounds does not mean they cannot be successful. You got to remove that from anywhere in your mental makeup because it does nothing but harm our young people. I would also say the data tells us that 3 out of the 10 would live in what's considered extreme poverty. What is extreme poverty? A family of 4 or more on a household income of $10,000 or less. You try living on $10,000 or less in this state. It is not an easy thing to do, right? So this is what we oftentimes have to face, that we have young people who are coming to us from circumstances that have been far from ideal, but the fact that they still show up here says something about their tenacity. The fact that they still show up here shows something about their desire to make a way when people have told them there's not a way. Okay, your jobs are difficult and demanding because we also know that 14 of the 30 students are being non-white. We are seeing an increasing what's called the browning of America. We've been seeing it here in California for the past 2.5, 3 decades, right? We just reached a point in this country in fall 2014 for the first time we enrolled more students of color in K-12 school than white students. That trend is not going to change. If we don't serve our students of color better, we will suffer as a nation. There's no 2 ways around it. We need to get comfortable around race, Talking about race, that's also part of the new standard for equity, to talk about the groups who are not given the same kinds of opportunities, to name them, to look at the data around and say, what can we do to build those boxes up, as Stan talked about, to make sure that those groups have opportunity, okay? We also know in our classroom, 8 of the 30 students would not speak English as their primary language, but more than the 250 languages spoken in schools across this country. Again, we have this notion that says that if you don't speak English as your first language, somehow there's something wrong with you. Let's rid you of that other language. That's the worst thing you can do to students, to anybody. Languages matter. Language is a part of identity. Language is a part of family. And we want to say that anybody who speaks a language other than English, somehow there's something that's not quite intellectually gifted with them, despite the fact that we have cognitive psychologists who tell us that for individuals who speak multiple languages, they have a certain degree of cognitive dexterity that those of us who don't speak multiple languages don't have. So where do the real gifts reside when it comes to issues of language? For those who speak multiple languages. So we have to flip that narrative on its head to say that kids who speak more than one language have gifts that we have to build upon. That makes sense to folks? Let's stay in that classroom. What we know is that 5 of the 30 students would not be reared by their biological parents, would be reared by either grandparents or foster parents. I met a woman in Chicago last year. She was 96 years old, 96 years old, raising her great-great-great-grandchildren. Think about that for a second. So when you talk to your students about home life, understand that it's not mom and dad who raised me, right? It's grandma, grandpa, nana, right? Abuela, abuelita, right? These are the folks who raised us. Understand what home lives look like. Understand that, again, that speaks to a family dynamic that says that we will invest in our young people to give them the best opportunity they can have in order to be successful. We also know in this classroom that 1 of the 30 students will be homeless. Again, these are national numbers. The numbers can be higher. So you have students who will come to you who still have no stable living arrangement, who are living in their cars, who are living in shelters, who are going from friend's house to friend's house. Some of them on the street. But what does it say about them that they still show up looking for a way to improve themselves? It shows, again, that they are resilient, that they have a tenacity, that they have a determination to somehow make a way out of it. This is what makes the job that you do so important, right? Because we have young people and older people too who are facing some structures and systems that really put them in a difficult situation to be successful. What we also know is that 6 of these 4 students will moved at least 4 times before they reach the 3rd grade. So we see student mobility being a big challenge. Students can tell you, I went to 15 different schools over 12 years. No continuity when it comes to education all the time. No consistency when it comes to school, right? So you ask them about a transcript, they can't even access a transcript because they've been to how many different schools over a 12-year period, right? That's why a little more time that you give to them makes all the difference in the world. A little more patience helps them feel like somebody believes in them, right? You know, a little bit more understanding tells them, okay, no one's ready to write me off just yet. And then the other part that we don't talk about as much, but we need to be mindful of, is that we also know, according to the Department of Children and Family Services, 7 of these 30 students will have been victims of some type of abuse, be it physical, verbal, emotional, or sexual abuse before they turn 18. And according to the Department of Children and Family Services, for every 1 case that we know about, there's another case that we don't know about, but we should. So do the math there for a second. That means almost half of the students, we're talking about before the age of 18, some type of abuse they've been subjected to. So we see all this, and we have some individuals who have 3, 4, 5 of these things that fit their description of who they are. Now, I don't want you to look at these data and start to feel sorry for kids and say these kids can't move on. I show these data because I want you to understand the resilience of the student that you see on this campus. Because there are students who deal with these factors but still show up here, who still succeed here, who still thrive here. Because these are things that would probably eliminate most folks. But the fact of the matter is that you have young people, individuals, who don't let their circumstances define them. That's why your investment matters. I will say it over and over again. It's not always the programs. It's not always the institution, but it's the people within them. You make people feel whole. You make people feel human. You make people feel like it is possible. And some of you do this, Some of you do this. How many part-timers do I have here? Can I hear you? Can I hear you? Some of you do this. And you're part-timers, or what I refer to as freeway faculty, right? You're working between 3 different institutions, right? But that's what you do for young people, what you do for people with a dream and a desire. You help them recognize what's possible. We got to advocate to make sure our part-time faculty has those same opportunities and same resources and same benefits as our full-time faculty. Because they're putting the same kind of time in, right? Meeting with students on the fly. I can talk to you as you walk with me to my car, right? Let me grab my notes out of my car. Right? I can grab a quick bite to eat and we can talk then. Making yourselves accessible means all the difference in the world, right? I am here because I had individuals like you, faculty members on community colleges who took the time out. John Whitehead, I will never forget John Whitehead from LS Southwest College. Mr. Whitehead took the time out and looked me in my eye and said, if you want this bad enough, I will help you get it. That's all I needed was a little bit of someone saying it's possible, right? I thought there was no way I'd ever pass a math class. But having someone telling you that, look, if you're willing to put the time in, if you're willing to meet me once a week for an hour, I'll do it. That's all I needed was someone who would help to show me the pathway. That's what many of you do every single semester, every single year. You make yourselves accessible and available for students because we see these factors. And then we couple it with the fact that what we also know is that these numbers right here paint a disturbing picture. So while we are graduating students at a higher rate from high schools, I start to question the real quality of the education that many of them are receiving. This data right here paints a disturbing picture. As a former K-12 teacher, I always look at reading proficiency, right? It tells us a big, big picture. If students are not able to read by grade 4, the likelihood that they'll ever catch up is not very good. And what the National Assessment for Educational Progress tells us is that when we look at these numbers by race, by gender, by socioeconomic status, that we have some real disturbing pictures up here. If we looked at our white 4th graders, 42% are at grade level by grade 4. The inverse of that tells us that 58% are not. If we had a conversation just about white students, that would be a big problem, that over half are not reading successfully by grade 4. But it gets worse when you look at the next 2 groups. The student that you are likely to see, Latino students. Only 17% of 4th graders proficient in reading, right? That's why when you see many of the students who come here, it's not that they have deficits, that they are products of a system that has not served them as well as it should have. We pass on too many students from one grade level to the next knowing they don't have the core skills to be successful. Black students, the same thing. Less than 20% are proficient in reading by grade 4. You look at these same data 4 years at grade 8, they're even more disturbing. You look at them in grade 12, they're even more daunting. And those students still find their way here. That's why, when I think about a young man I had to meet when I gave a talk at Sacramento City College last year, he said it took him 6 years to earn his AA. And I asked him, I said, well, did you go part-time, or did you take time off, or was it something that kind of disrupted the pathway? He said, sorry, if you had to understand I had to take prerequisites to my prerequisites, right? And even those prerequisites had prerequisites, right? He said you take 5, 6 courses just to get to the basic level of writing and math because of this right here. Understand, we have young people who are trying to be the best that they can be, but oftentimes they have a system or structure that has not adequately served them, right? When you look at these data here, we look at the students who qualify for free reduced lunch, that's low-income students, less than 20%. If you're not reading successfully at 8 years old, the likelihood that you will be reading successfully at 18 is not very good, right? That's why you have to provide the academic supports that our students need. That's why you have to help them to understand where they can get tutoring. That's why you have to explain to them, look, this is possible, but the road is going to be a long one, but you can accomplish it if you are determined to do it. Sometimes our students get so frustrated because the pathway seems so difficult. I have to take how many classes, over how long a period of time? And part of what I said, the students that we're serving here are students who are not only going to school, but they're oftentimes working full-time, working part-time. Some are parents. Some are caring for their own parents, caring for loved ones, right? Doing multiple things all at once. But again, the fact that they can juggle all that says something about their desire, right? We look at the same data when it comes to math. They aren't much better. So again, we look at where our students struggle the most. Math, reading, right? That's why your job is so difficult. That's why your job is so demanding. That's why your job is so challenging, because again, you're being asked to respond to problems and situations that you did not create. Understand the difficulty of this task. Understand why we have to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more insightful, a little bit more directive, to help our young people to understand how they can overcome some of the things that they did not receive in their own educational experiences. So now, here's what I need you to do. I think three things help to make this manageable. Many of you already do these things. It's kind of straightforward. You have to know, you have to care, and you have to act. What do you have to know? You need to know your students. Take time out to talk to them. Hear their stories. Understand their struggles. Recognize that they have oftentimes overcome some tremendous obstacles just to be on this campus. Oftentimes you see lower or higher numbers of lower socioeconomic students. There's a host of challenges that explain that struggle, right? I want to go to school. My parents want me to work. I think education will pay off, but it's going to take me 5, 6 years. Which one should I do? I don't want my family to feel like I'm abandoning them. It would help if I help bring a few dollars into the household, right? Talk to them, know their stories, know their struggles, share your stories. Many of you had similar kinds of circumstances. Oftentimes what helps us, what helped me, was knowing that I was not the first one to travel that path. Knowing that someone else has traveled and successfully navigated the same path they're trying to embark upon. Know your students, right? Understand what I refer to as the institutional damage that's been done to them, right? They don't understand that always. They know something wasn't right, but they can't quite articulate what it was. Many of our students attend some of the schools that are just not adequately servicing them, right? Stan talked about this counselor situation. We live in the state, here in California, that has the second worst counselor-to-student ratio in the country. The National Association of School Counselors said that an ideal student-to-counselor ratio should be 250 students to every one counselor. That's ideal at the high school level. That's ideal. 250 to 1. The national average is 450 to 1. Right? But in our great state of California, it's 1,100 to 1. Think about that for a second. 1,100 students per every one counselor. So you talk to some of your students about who was your high school counselor. They have no idea. How many times did you meet with your counselor? Never met her. Tell me about the kind of schedule that your counselor gave you. I was just sent a list of classes and told to attend them. So again, when I talk about the institutional damage and systems and structures, we allow that to happen to students on a regular basis. Teacher quality. There's a reason why we see students who consistently find themselves behind the 8 ball academically in reading and math, because we have certain schools, and let's just call it what it is. You see this because you interact with the students. Certain students attend schools, and it pains me to say this because I spend a lot of time in K-12 schools, but there is just not the quality of teaching that our students deserve. When you look at high poverty schools, you are more likely to see underprepared teachers, underqualified teachers, who are not giving students what they need and deserve. So students who are already behind academically fall further and further and further behind. So we have to ask ourselves what kind of quality education our students receive. So how we care by doing the things that you're already doing, right? Make yourself accessible, right? Accessibility is big. So to reject this deficit discourse about what cannot happen, what is not possible, right? More than anything else, as you talk to people, and the literature has proved this time and time again, when you talk to individuals who have been successful in the educational pathway, and you say, tell me a favorite teacher that you had. Oftentimes what people will say, they'll tell you the person, the grade, the subject area, and say, why was that person so instrumental in your life? And what folks typically say is something about how much that person believed in you, how that person cared, how that person made me feel, how that person challenged me, how that person believed in me. Rarely do we hear folks say, you know what, I really struggled with that Pythagorean theorem, and Mr. Smith really helped me to understand that thing, right? It's the way that we make folks feel. It's the belief. It's the sense that somehow you are possible, right? It's the sense that you can do this. And part of what we do when we reject that deficit discourse, it tells our young people and all of our students here, you can do this, right? I know you have potential. We just want someone to recognize what we are capable of doing. So that no caring act means that we act in ways that we recognize that we have these students who come to us who have resilience beyond words, right? Have a student describe to you what a typical day is like for him or her, right? For some of the students that you serve, they're up at 4 in the morning, right? Catching the bus 2-3 times to get to one place, take classes. After they leave the 3 classes, they have to get on another bus to go across town to work 5-6 hours a day. Then come home, fix dinner for children or for parents, right? Only to get up and do the same thing again. That is a certain type of resilience. That is someone who is determined to find a way out of no way. How can we not build on that? We have to, right? And for some students, they don't even see that as being a big deal. It's just what they've been doing from the time they were 7, 8, 9 years old. Understand that when you know, when you care, and when you act in ways that you do not think less of students because of their income, that you do not think students because of their circumstances, when you do not talk about the fact that they cannot accomplish things, you give them belief, you give them possibility, you give them hope. That's what we're talking about here. Individuals who need someone to believe that they are capable. So I need you to think about how this know, care, and act is about debunking this institutional damage, eradicating the deficit discourse, increasing accessibility. And I know that you're already stretched beyond belief. You're already teaching probably way more class than you thought you could teach, right? But you still find a way. How many times have you taught that class and you think, okay, my class ends at 12. I'll be out of here at 12:05. You look up and at 1 o'clock you're still there, right? Because you're knowing and you're understanding how much your time means for students who just want a little bit of peace, a little bit of insight, to understand a concept, but to understand a text. Those things matter. It's the little things. It's the people that make institutions what they are. When I look at your data around overall institutional satisfaction, that does not happen by accident. That happens because there are individuals who are giving their time, their talent, their attention. That's what you are doing. Continue to do that. Those numbers are, I mean, you are hard-pressed to find those kind of data anywhere when it comes to educational institutions. You have found a recipe. You have found a sweet spot. Continue to build on that and make sure that we don't let students off the hook and recognize that, look, if they want it, they can attain it here. Also understand, we talk about this resilience. Part of what you've got to understand is that there are things that our students need to have. And you might have to direct them in the way of how they can identify resources, right? What we're talking about is that we want students to have environmental assets, right? With these notions of caring relationships, high expectations, right? Again, let your students know that they do not have to be defined by their circumstances. They are products of them, but they do not define them, right? Help them to understand their own resilience. Help them to understand their own determination. Help them to understand that, look, that if you find the right kinds of peers, part of what we did, for many of us who've been successful, we found 1 or 2 other people who are on the same pathway. It lets you know that you're not alone. It lets you know that somebody else is trying to also figure this thing out. My dad always talks about his friend, Milton Johnson, who was what he calls now his accountability partner. They took classes together. They studied together. They talked to professors together. Right? Just having one other person. That's why I tell these young people, it's not about how many people that you have. You don't need to have 20 people in your life who are so-called friends. You just need one good person who's going to push you and challenge you just as much as you push and challenge that person. Right? Peers make a big difference. And the sense of community. What you can create here is a sense of community that you belong here. We want you here. We'll do everything we can to help you succeed here. Right? Part of what students need is a sense of belonging. You are connected to a place that recognizes your potential. You're connected to people who want to see your success. We have to believe that when our students succeed, that is a direct result of what we have invested. It's not happened by accident. So we have to understand that resilience that is manifesting in our students every single day that they do this work. If we don't do that, we don't recognize their strongest asset, right? Their intellect and their resilience. So part of what I want us to think about is we have to ask, what lens are we using, right? We talk to our students oftentimes, they will tell us that they had teachers when they were in K-12 who just did not challenge them, who did not push them, who did not believe in them. And they had this lens that was all centered around what they could not do, what they did not have, right? And then when you hear that over and over and over again, it becomes internalized thinking. So we have to ask, what lens are we using? I hope the lens that we're using is one that sees the power and the potential and the promise that each and every student that we serve on this campus has. We have to ask ourselves, what do I believe about poor children? What do I believe about poor adults? That they can be successful. What is it that I believe about families who come from less than ideal circumstances? Right? So we have to help to redistribute this thing. I'm always concerned about the fact that in California, the state that we live in, the great state, we have the 7th largest economy in the world. 7th largest economy in the world. A big chunk of our economy comes from right here in this valley with the agricultural work that we do. But the painful part about that reality is that so many of the men, women, and children who work those fields never get to participate in the larger economy that should provide for them. It's those sons and daughters that we want to provide an opportunity to. They create a tremendous amount of wealth for this nation, for this state, for this world, but yet they still feel so far away from the possibility of having something different. So the lens we are using says that those children deserve just as much of an opportunity as anyone else. So we have to ask, how do we see, how do we reframe this conversation and not place deficits on our students? Not talk about what they can't do, or how badly they're behind, or how much they didn't learn in high school. Yes, those things might be the case, but we cannot let that define them. I'm going to ask you to think about how you use your lens to reframe and reshape how we think about young people, to help them understand what is possible. I say that I would not be here were it not for folks like yourselves who believed and pushed and challenged. My father would not have completed what he did unless he had not gone to City College and had somebody who said, we see potential in you, young man. You're not defined by that humble upbringing. That may be a part of who you are, but that does not define you. Shape the narrative. Change the paradigm in ways that each and every student that comes here sees a pathway out. So I want to ask you, what lens are you using? Because some of us see things, and we see students who come from a host of different challenges, and we see nothing but hopelessness. Others see those same students and we see promise and potential and lots of talent. Just like you see this picture here, right? Some of you right away saw one thing. Others are thinking, what did he just put up there, right? What do you see up there? Cow. Everybody sees a cow, right? No, I don't see it, right? Help me out, right? What's the lens you're using? There's a cow that's looking at you. Do you see the cow looking at you? Oh, you got it now, right? You got it. There's a cow up there. Oh, you guys, man, I still don't see a cow. Maybe a horse, right? Part of what I'm asking you to do, part of what I'm pleading for you to do, part of what I'm imploring for you to do is look deeper, right? Is to kind of adjust your lens. Still help me out, I still can't see it. There's an eye right there. Got a nose right here. Got an ear right here. Is it helping us out? Oh, we got it now, right? All right, here we go, right? Sometimes we have to tighten our focus up. Sometimes we have to clarify how we're looking at what we're looking at because we're looking at all the wrong things. You have to have an eye and a vision on what is capable, what is possible. I always tell the story. When I was younger, in middle school, my brother and I would catch the bus to and from school because my parents worked. But one day my mom did not have to work and she said she would pick us up from school. And you know, we hear this saying all the time about, you know, one person's trash is another person's treasure. I tell the story because my mom picked my brother up from school one day and we drove about a block away from school. And she stopped the car abruptly. And we weren't sure why, but this happened to be the day that the trash was being picked up. And my mom told my brother and I, you see that table right there, and that trash heap, I need you to pick that up. So my brother like, come on, Mom, really? In front of all our friends walking by, you want us to get out and pick up your stuff out the trash heap? Mom said, do it, get it, do it. Old beat up, raggedy table. She said, put it in the trunk. Me and my brother picked the table up. 2 of the legs had partially fallen off. Dirty, nasty, decrepit, beat up table. We put it in the trunk. Mother always had this knack of trying to refurbish things. She took the table home, and over the course of about a month, she started to put on some new legs. She sanded it down, and she repolished it, refurnished it, and put some other designs on it, and made it to a very nice table that she still has to this day. Something I think about, wow, how did she take that table that was in the heap of trash and make it into what it is right now? And so while she made this table as nice as it is, one thing she still talks about is the fact that she doesn't have a matching table to go with that. I'm not big on matching. You can't just have one, you gotta have 2 of everything. I need a matching table, she always said. So I remember some years ago, I was with some friends who were down in Westwood, and there's this old antique furniture store, kind of walking by, and I see a table that really eerily almost resembles the table that my mom has in her home, right? And I thought, wow, to do a double table. It looks like the table mom has at home. Then I really started to think, well, this would also be kind of cool, right? Because if I could get this table for her, then she won't complain as much about not having a matching table, right? So I said, I'd be going to ask the guy about, the table, because this is the table I'm going to give my mom for, I think it's a birthday or Mother's Day or something that's coming up. So I went and inquired, I said, tell me about that table you have in the front, how much is it? He said, well, which one are you talking about? I said, it's the one that's right in the window display. He said, well, I have a couple of them up there. I said, the one that's, about knee high, I described the characteristics. He said, you're talking about he said, I have one that's a 1940 something, I don't know, the one that you have up there. So I said, let's go. He said, I'll go show you. So we go up and I show him the table, the one I'm looking for my mom. He said, oh yeah, that's an original, that's a 19 something or other. I think he was talking about. There's only like 2 of them in the world or something like that. So I said, okay, cool. Bottom line, tell me how much it costs, because I want to buy it for my mother. He said, that table's $1,500. Oh, I love my mother. I love my mother a whole lot. $1,500? And so I said, well, okay, how you tell me, okay, well, I'll be back, knowing that you're not going to come back, right? So I think about that story because that table in so many ways resembled the one that my mother has in her household. But what's powerful about that story is that my mother saw something in that table when it was beaten up and trashy and dented and had all these things wrong with it. But she didn't define it based on how it looked at that time. She saw that table and she had a vision for what it could become. And that vision was very much in line with what that table looked like in that antique furniture store that I saw. And I always tell that story because I think that's the way we have to think about the work we do with students. We can talk about students in a lot of negative ways. Single parent, immigrant children, language learners, poor, foster home, right? Teen parent. We can find all these things that we want to say are somehow things that work against them. But part of what we have to have is that vision and that lens that says that somehow that's not who they are. And oftentimes what we all need is someone to have a vision for us of something bigger and something better. See, I stand here before you today because there was someone who had vision for me, right? I was thinking about how grateful I am for the folks whose shoulders I stand on, right? Much like many of you. I maintain all the time that we are all here because we're the product of other people's expectations. Somebody expected us to be here. Somebody willed it. Somebody prayed for it. Somebody hoped for it. Somebody wished for it. Somebody wanted something different. And they had that vision. And sometimes we didn't even believe it. All right? I stand here. You stand here because someone had that expectation that says that you can. I cannot tell you how important that is. The student that you will see starting next week, some of them will probably be here tomorrow looking to find early access to you. Right? Those students just want you to give a little bit of your time, a little bit of your insight. And so yes, you teach some amazing classes, you service a lot of students, but the little things go a long way. A smile, good to see you back. If I can help you, let me know. Don't hesitate to email me. Those things help students say, okay, I'm part of a community that wants to see me succeed. So that vision that you have to have for every individual you see has to change that, because again, the data does not always bode very positively for us. It tells us, as I said earlier, that most of the students who start here will not transfer. Most of the students who start here will not complete their certification. Right? Something happens along the way where folks lose faith. Folks lose any sense of belief that this is possible. So I want you to change that vision. It says that we don't have to define students by who they are, and that vision, once we adjust our lens, looks like this. We see students completing their tasks. Put pictures up in your offices. Put pictures up in your presentations of this, just so you can start to have the subliminal message for your students that says, this is your reality. I'm going to tell these students down here, this is your reality. Right? That's what you've got to see, eat, drink, live, breathe every single day. When I complete that certification, when I complete that degree, when I walk across that stage, that's my reality. Right? Start to talk about it now. Help them ingrain the possibility of what will happen. Right? We've got to get this right, because what we're talking about is the future of our society. Right? When you look at the demographics, it tells us that we are increasing by the day with our Latino population. Right? We cannot thrive as a society if our largest population is being woefully undereducated. It does not bode well for us economically, politically, or socially. So I'm going to beg you all, plead you all, that we do everything in our power. It doesn't matter what your job title is, that you take a little bit of time to push, to challenge, and help young people reach their potential. I'm going to ask you, with all my conviction, to help make this right, because lives hang in the balance if we don't get this right. You change lives with what you do. You will help to inspire young people to recognize that something better out there awaits them. So I'm going to not only beg and plead and implore, I'm going to raise the stakes one more level for you. When I was growing up in Compton, we used to have this saying that says, okay, you don't think I can do something? I'm going to dare you to do it. I said, okay, you're going to dare me to do it? So you call me out, you dare me to do something, right? Then sometimes you have your friends who would take you to another level and say, well, I'm not just going to dare you. I'm a double dare you, right? And then, you know, you always have to one up the next kid, right? Okay, so you double dare me? How about I double dog dare you, right? Then when you really got the stakes high, what would you say? Some of you, I hear you say, I'm a triple dog dare, right? So I triple dog dare each and every one of you here to make this a phenomenal year. Make this a year of transformation. Make this a year of innovation. Find one student this year that you're going to put a little bit of extra time and attention to because you see the promise and potential. I'm going to triple dog dare each and every one of you to push, to challenge, and help to make every person here recognize that if they're willing to put the time, the commitment, the sacrifice, and the effort into their goals and aspirations, it is possible. I know you can do it. I know you will do it. In some ways, we have no alternative but to do it. Not only do our students await this opportunity, but so does our future. So thank you very much and have a wonderful and outstanding day.
All right. Can I get an amen? I feel like I'm in the church, Doctor.
Thank you so much. Before we break this morning, can we get a special thank you for our signers who have just been going fast and furious. We have a wonderful privilege and opportunity to be a part of College of the Sequoias. Personally, I give thanks every day to be able to serve here with all of you. Thank you for your time this morning. I want to remind all of us that we're dismissed now to our department meetings, and we've got administrative services who will be meeting in the Ponderosa, and if your student services remain here, have a great semester. We'll see you in January, if not sooner.